This week's topic is about the empath. It's a term I see being thrown around a lot in the internet, and I think there's a lot of confusion and misconceptions around it. But first, I start the episode with an energy update. Last week, I posted on my story something called the Schumann Resonance, and what's been going on with it. A lot of people resonated with it. So I talk about what the Schumann Resonance is and how it's affecting us. And then I get into the way the empath. What does it mean to have empathy, to be an empath? And of course, when we talk about the empath, we talk about the other side of the coin, the narcissist. I define the overt narcissist, the covert narcissist, how the empath and the narcissist interact, and so much more. I also talk about how you, as a person with empathic qualities, can turn something that can be something that drains you and can be seen as a bit of a curse, how you can turn it around and make it your superpower. If this episode resonates with you, please be sure to leave me your review, to subscribe, and to share it with someone who you think really needs to hear this message.
You are listening to the School of Whispers podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this is my space to get real, open, and weird about my life experiences as a psychic, medium, energy healer, and student of Chinese medicine. On the show, I'll be sharing my healing journey and the concepts I've learned along the way, and I'll be having guests on talking about the same sort of thing. I am so happy you're here, and I hope this show leaves you feeling inspired and empowered to learn how to listen to the whispers of your own body and spirit. Let's get into the show.
Hello and welcome back to the show. So, I want to know how you guys have been hanging in there. I know that it's been collectively a strange and tough time. Honestly, I don't think I felt normal in my body, physically and emotionally, since July. If you've listened to the Whispers of the Inner Child episode, I talked about how I was presented with the opportunity to release some blockages from my guides through dreams and meditation, and I said yes, and wow, I just didn't know what I was saying yes to, and since then it's been, I feel that all of my scars and wounds that in the past I've been able to be like, ooh, maybe not now, maybe later, maybe another time. I'm not really able to do that. They refuse to be shelved. And so I'm having to sit my ass down and work on things. And I've been feeling lows and anxiety that I haven't felt since living in New Zealand, which I don't know if I really have dived into that on the show too much, but it was a really tough time for me in 2019. The first time I lived in New Zealand in 2017 was probably the best time of my life. I made incredible friends, incredible life-changing friendships. I met my husband in that year, and that was insanely beautiful. And so when I moved to New Zealand in 2019, I'm ready for more fun, more adventure, and it just wasn't that. And it's like, back then I would wake up in the morning, feel anxious and be like, oh my God, what is this? What is this in my chest? I feel like I can't fully take a breath. Or I would notice, oh wow, I haven't taken a deep breath all day today. And that's kind of what's been going on with me. And I know now that, there's so many reasons. And personally, astrology is a bit complicated for me. I believe in the power and the truth of astrology for sure. And I know that the celestial planetary happenings are absolutely influential on my state and all of our states of being. But really what gets me... It's easier for me to grasp and understand somehow because it's actually kind of complicated, but it's something called the Schumann Resonance. And I posted something about this on my story, and I've had so many people on my story on Instagram, and I had so many people come to me about it. So before I really dive into today's topic, I want to talk a little bit about the Schumann resonance. And I'm not claiming to be an expert at all. I really think it's one of those things that you have to dedicate hours to call yourself an expert, to call yourself proficient in the Schumann resonance. That being said, though, I did a little bit of an extra deep dive before recording, and I want to share this with you because this resonance is something that it affects our day-to-day lives, and it also reveals what's going on with the collective consciousness. So what is this thing? So we got Earth going on, and then we got the sphere of space of the ether around Earth, and between Earth and the ether is something called an atmospheric cavity. So it's like, think of Earth and then think of sort of Earth's aura around it. And according to the research that I did, every second there's upwards of 2,000 lightning flashes within this atmospheric cavity around the Earth. And each flash creates an electromagnetic wave that creates this sort of this sphere around Earth, this aura. And they create measurable frequencies. So the Earth is electromagnetic. We know that, right? By looking at compasses. Well, we are electromagnetic as well. That's how you're able to feel into each other's frequencies and how we're able to resonate with each other's frequencies and all that good stuff. A scientist named Schumann, a German physicist, he was the one who discovered this resonance and started measuring it. The EMF, electromagnetic frequency, EMF of Earth, is about 7.83 hertz. It's also considered kind of like the heartbeat of Mother Earth. So the Schumann resonance, that EMF measured frequency, you can see it as Mother Earth's heartbeat, and it's at 7.8 hertz. Well, Schumann, through his research and his calculations, he projected that in the 1990s, and he discovered this back in 1952. So he projected that in the 90s that this frequency would start jumping, start raising. So the Earth's vibration would start raising. I wonder as a physicist, and I don't know if quantum physics was really that, of a thing back then. I really don't think it was. But I wonder if he knew what he was projecting. And his calculations were correct. And they really started jumping around, I believe, 2012. And so they have these charts, and I will link the two Instagram accounts where I've learned the most from in the show notes. One is Schumann Resonance 1, and the other is the Celestial Sage. And that's where I got a lot of this research from her website. And it wasn't until later on after this discovery did people start to realize, oh shit, these jumps and there's a whole website where they measure the frequencies, and they have all these complicated charts that I've really done my best to learn. It's like every couple of months I'll return and try to relearn it again. But they realize that these jumps have a huge effect on the collective consciousness. So I'm going to actually pull up a little chart here and give you a couple of symptoms of these massive spikes in our Earth's EMF. So some physical symptoms could be vertigo, headaches and migraines, nausea, trouble sleeping, muscle and joint pain, fatigue, lightheadedness, tinnitus, digestive issues, and kind of chronic cold or flu-like symptoms. Some emotional symptoms include anxiety, depression, mood swings, and cognitive symptoms include brain fog, memory loss, difficulty concentrating. And my greatest advice for you is, if you are aware of these charts, or if you're just aware of these sort of symptoms kind of coming at you out of nowhere, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but depression is absolutely a part of this list. Because we have an electromagnetic frequency, because frequencies and vibrations, they're all on a spectrum. Usually if the earth is spiking, it's going to take a little bit of time for us humans to adjust our bodies, our physical bodies, to this spike. So in order to move yourself through the spectrum of frequencies so that you can realign with earth, put your feet on the ground. Just get your bare feet right on the ground. And that is maybe hug a tree too. I don't know if that'll do any good, but you should hug a tree every once in a while. But yeah, that will help you align yourself. So I do include 2 charts in the show notes. Hopefully I figured out how to pull them up. But the chart number 1 that I want you to look at is a quote unquote normal for 2022 looking chart. So there's a lot of blues, a lot of greens going on, and then there's these big flashes of white surrounded by more of an orange reddish quality here. And if you aren't looking at the chart, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. So I really highly recommend that you look at it. And what do these colors represent? They represent the jumps in hertz in our EMF frequencies. So frequencies are measured in hertz here. So the blue color, it represents calm, represents normal. The green color, which you often see within the blue, represents 3D healing. So the healing of our physical body. So while it doesn't necessarily mean right now, right here, you are healing, it represents the enabling of physical healing. And then the white, it represents 5D light codes. What does that mean? It means enlightenment. It means collective consciousness boosting through enlightenment. But when I listened to the Celestial Sage's YouTube video on this, she calls it divine intervention. And maybe these white marks, they represent higher dimensional beings or God, extraterrestrials, the GFL, the Galactic Federation of Light. I don't know. But what she says is it's this divine intervention into our collective consciousness to enable moments of enlightenment. But notice that around the moments of enlightenment, so this really strong polar light on the positive spectrum, well, as the nature of everything goes, if you're going to be really strongly on one side of a polarity, it's going to attract the other side of the polarity. So what's the opposite of light? Dark. So what surrounds these light beams on this chart are red-ish colors, and anything that's red represents blockages. What I've come to learn is when the chart's in the blue-green, personally, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty at ease. Everything's pretty normal. And then when these big white sparks come in, I notice that like my meditations are a lot more potent, that I'm a lot more apt to tune into things. My readings become a little bit more intense and yeah, all that good stuff. But if you're looking at the chart in front of you, that I have in front of me right now, sometimes there's these, which I specifically chose this one because it shows a quote unquote gate. So when there's a white spike followed by some green, blue, normal energy, followed by another white spike, to me, this represents ego death. So on either side of the gates, we have these white enlightenment frequencies. These white enlightenment frequencies, like I said, they enable this heightened consciousness. And what I've come to learn is, I have that moment of an epiphany and seeing where I'm supposed to go and how things really are meant to be. And I see this path ahead. But then it's followed, there's these red blockages that are surrounding these white lights, which the white lights enable the removal of blockages. But then when we go back to that green-blue frequency, I notice that I feel this low. I feel low and just not really myself. I see the path ahead, but I'm just not really that inspired to do much about it. And I personally would call this a bit of an ego death, because within that space, I learn what is holding me back. And I have to learn how to let go of what's holding me back. And then usually after that moment, what enables me to remove that blockage is another spike in that white frequency. But then something that's really interesting that happens on the chart are blackouts. What are blackouts? I don't entirely know. But what I like to call the blackout, personally for me, what I notice what happens within the blackout phases is I have a bit of a dark night of the soul. Dark night of the soul is that in-between phase. You're in the ego death, and enlightenment isn't really coming anytime soon. I am absolutely 110% in a dark night of the soul right now. So I know what I need. I know what to do, but I don't really want to do it. Or I'm doing it and I'm doing it in the easiest way possible because everything else right now is just, I'm exhausted and everything hurts and I'm tired. I just want to sleep. I want to sit on the couch and watch Survivor and cuddle with my husband and get high. And I know that that's really not what is best for me when I'm going through a really low, hard time. Yes, comfort is good, but I absolutely, like anyone else, I grow attached to the comfort and it turns into complacency. So in the dark night of the soul, I would call it, if you are really in tune and you're doing what's best for yourself, I would call it a grieving phase. So you're not ready to make the change. Intellectually, you know better. Emotionally, it's just not there. And it sucks. And you feel low and you feel dark. And just allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to feel shitty. And say goodbye to the piece of you that you lost within your ego death. I think a lot of us want to skip this phase because, I mean, fair enough. It's tough. It's tough to acknowledge that you're no longer the person that you used to be. But you know, so many of us want to find ourselves on the other side of the struggle. We think, all right, I know what to do now. I choose to heal. Okay, I'm healed. I'm on the other side. Let's go. Let's fucking go. But it's unfortunately, it's just not the way that human experience goes. I truly believe that in order to really fully move through an ego death, we must mourn and say goodbye and lay to rest the piece of us that is no longer us. Because even if you feel frustrated or feelings of animosity towards that piece of you and your human perspective tells you it did not serve you at all, it did in some way. So the second chart that I showed you, there's no colors. There's nothing going on. It says 5 days of darkness. And we're actually on day 6 of the darkness here. And so it's a tough time for the collective. And on the celestial stage, on her post about this, she said this is kind of unprecedented times. She's somebody who knows how to read the chart. She teaches people. So I would call her an expert on these charts. And she said that there hasn't been any other time of darkness like this. And I know my guides had warned me that something would crash at the end of summer. And I honestly thought it was going to be the stock market or something. But what I didn't know is it was going to be these charts and my emotional stability. And I don't know what it means. I haven't looked deeper into what it means. All I know is how it feels. And I know that when I posted on Instagram, everyone else was like, oh my God, yes, me too. Something that she did say within her post was to be kind to yourself, to not be so hard on yourself and to take it easy and to, there was an affirmation that she put, and I want to pull it up because it was really beautiful and very simple. And it was, I approve of myself and love myself deeply and completely. That's it. That's all you have to do to survive right now. And I know it's easier said than done. It's not, that's it. That's like, just say I love myself and everything will be okay. I think I know now more than ever that it's not that easy. But we will get through it, guys, and know that if you are feeling heaviness, depression, anxiety, all of these things I mentioned, it doesn't have to be situational. It's not entirely you. It's not you fucking up in your life or you being out of alignment within this retrograde. Because yeah, apparently that's happening too, which I'm sure that has absolutely influenced this blackout period. And just know you're not alone and you're going to be okay. And it's not all yours. It's the collective's. And it's time to move through the darkness. We don't have to stay put. The light will come sooner or later. Or maybe never. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I'm supposed to be positive here. But yeah. All right.
Hey guys, so quick update here. When I recorded this podcast, it was on a Thursday morning and now it's Sunday afternoon. And on Friday, the charts went back on live. I just took a quick peek at them and it's just in that blue-green phase. So there's no really big spikes or nothing really quote-unquote interesting happening going on with it. But that doesn't mean that we're necessarily out of it. As I mentioned earlier, we exist on a spectrum of vibrational frequencies, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the physical body to get the memo and to realign. So get those feet on the ground and give yourself a pat on the back. We made it.
Moving on. Topic is being an empath. What does that mean? First, I want to talk about what empathy is, because before the empath existed, empathy was a thing. Or rather, is a thing. It's an emotion. It's the ability, putting it super simply, it's the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and to understand what they're going through. It's very different from sympathy. The two can understandably be mixed up by others, but sympathy is when you share the feelings of another. Sympathy is understanding. Sympathy is sharing. And that's really it. That's really all there is to empathy. I don't really think I need to go deeper into what the verbal definition of empathy is. But what's happened is the spiritual community has taken the word empathy and noticed that some people have more empathy than others, and some people have this ability to understand what someone's going through without even really discussing it with them. They walk into a room, or they're sitting close to someone and they get a psychic hit and realize, oh shit, this person's going through a divorce, or this person's family member just died, or whatever it may be. And so what they've done is they've took this word and they've created the empath. So in my research, the empath I've seen is defined as this: a highly sensitive individual who is keenly aware of what people around them are feeling and thinking. They are exceptionally intuitive and empathetic, often to the point of taking on the pain of others. Empaths are also sensitive to and affected by their environment. So that means like certain lighting. I personally hate overhead lighting because I can hear it. I can feel it. That fluorescent lighting, that hum in the background makes me crazy. So if you're looking around the world, who's an empath? Am I an empath? According to this definition, it's certain lighting can reveal your empathicness, or being in a crowded room making you super uncomfortable, which not gonna lie, before I love people and I love being jovial, and I like going to parties, but I do get a little bit of social anxiety before going to parties, because if I'm not careful, it's a lot of energy for me to take on. And plus, totally unrelated, but my body does not like alcohol. So my body's a little bit anxious when it comes time to roll out and get to a party. And music is also something that an empath, according to this definition, can be very sensitive to. So musical lyrics are, I don't know if you really pay attention to a lot of songs, especially on the radio are saying, but a lot of it's kind of fucked up, but also in terms of musical sounds. So you can be sensitive to jarring sounds and things like that. There are also empaths that can be very sensitive to foods, such as dairy, caffeine, highly processed food, whatever. And there's just like those whom they interact with daily. Looking at this definition, I like to use the matcha, the plant that's responsible for matcha, as an example. So this plant is really good. It's known for filtering out the soil around it. So if there's any sort of toxins and toxicity within the soil, matcha, the plant, is going to pick it up and process and filter it out. And that's why you want to be really careful with where you buy your matcha, because it could actually be more harmful for you than helpful. And that's why empaths need to practice energetic hygiene, because if you're constantly surrounding yourself with certain people, certain music, certain lighting, certain rhetorics and sounds and foods, you are going to be absorbing all of those toxins. And yeah, we're all able to filter out and digest and process things, but it can be a lot for the system, and the liver can only take so much. So your energetic filtration system can only take so much, even if you're doing all the practices. So you need to be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. I looked at, I think it's Lola Pickett a while ago. She does a lot on, or she used to maybe do a lot on empathicness, or the empath, the spiritual empath. And she has a whole list of the different types of empaths, and I'm going to run through this list. So we have the emotional empath. The question that the emotional empath may be asking themselves often is, are these emotions mine? The somatic empath is, and you can be one or many or all of these things all at once. But the somatic empath is probably often feeling pain that doesn't belong to them. I remember when I used to stretch people all day, every day. I may still do stretch therapy, or I like to call it mobility therapy now, because it gets thrown in with Stretch Zone and Stretch Lab and all that silly stuff. Oh no, it's not silly. It's great. But when I was doing that every day and taking so many clients every day, I remember that there would always be like a theme of the week. Everyone would come in and they would have lower back pain. And I never, ever have lower back pain. But by the end of the week, I would have lower back pain because I was absorbing their pain. So I guess you could say that I'm a somatic empath in ways. There's herbal empaths, which that's kind of cool. I think of the hedge witch. So somebody who has a strong connection with herbs and the food that they make. Actually, it makes me think about my good friend Sasha. I remember, so when I cook, I'm really trying to be responsible and in control, especially when I'm cooking for others. But I like to be aware of what I'm thinking about. And when I had Sasha over, it was back in 2021. I had her over for dinner, and she's a very, very sensitive person, energetically sensitive and all of that good stuff. And she felt like shit after she ate the meal that I cooked. And it could have been anything, but I remember watching her feel so, like, I think she felt like she was going to pass out. She may have ended up throwing up. And I looked back at what I was thinking about when I was cooking, because I was trying to think, what did I do? Did I do something in the food? But the thing is I was feeling fine, and so were the two other people who ate the meal with us. And it was delicious, but the whole time I had gone through a really big traumatic fight with a family member, and the whole time while I was cooking, I was thinking about that horrible, horrible fight. So did I contribute to her illness? I don't know. But according to the herbal empath, she may be an herbal empath and may have picked that up. I might be running with a lot of this, but I mean, isn't that what spirituality is taking things and running with it? Anyways, we got the animal empath. So somebody who is really proficient at tuning in with what's going on with an animal or a plant, somebody with a green thumb, or when they're in nature, they feel so much. Well, I will get into later what I really believe about the empath. But yes, when they're in nature, they feel their cup filled. And I hesitated because who doesn't feel their cup filled when they're in nature? I feel like it's very rare when an individual doesn't feel full in nature. But anyways, we had the communication empath. So it's someone who has this ability to use their voice and their words to deeply connect with others. It's as if they know exactly what to say and how to say it, and their words, while they may have said 4 or 5 words, there's so much more depth into what they actually said. And if you sit back and you think about those words, you can get a million meanings out of it. We have vibrational empaths, somebody who is highly sensitive to vibrational frequencies of everything around them, of a place, of a person. If I could pin Dr. Adamson, for example, my professor who's an energy healer, who scan energy with his eyes, who can scan energy in anything. I remember one time I gave him a gift from Peru. It was a healing stone, and I could see his whole body be filled with the vibration of this stone. So we also have spiritual empaths, so somebody who has a clear connection with the other side, the spirit world. Spatial empaths, who have a connection / are affected by the spaces around them. So whether it's their home, whether it's nature, I would assume this is that person who walks into a haunted home and thinks, oh shit, there's something going on. Or somebody who's really good. I think about my friend Lauren, who's really good at creating. She has this distinct style and she creates this really beautiful space. And then we have the psychic empath. So it's somebody who gets intuitive hits of knowing. They don't know where it's coming from, but you just know. So all these things, I'm like cringing. I'm not going to lie. I'm cringing when I'm reading out all these things because we are all of these things. There's no such thing as putting yourself in one box of which kind of empath are you. We are all empathic. We are all psychic. I could connect you. I could be defined by every single thing on that list. I think it's just you could just say it's an in-tuned person, somebody who allows himself to be affected by the things around them, whether it's good or bad. And I really just, I used to be all into the empath identity. Oh, I'm an empath and blah, blah, blah. But it's not true, because when you're talking about empaths, it's impossible not to talk about the other side of the coin, which is the narcissist, which I am going to get into with more detail because I think that it's an overused term. But what happens is if we are an empath, if I'm an empath, there is no way in hell that I could be a narcissist. You're doing yourself a disservice by defining yourself as one thing, because then what happens, you cannot be another, and it creates blind spots. So what I like to say is somebody can have empathic qualities, and then somebody else, I personally don't love. I know that in psychology we have diagnosis and all that other stuff, but I don't like to call somebody a narcissist, because again, that's putting them in a box and it doesn't leave a lot of room for other qualities of them. So I like to say somebody may have more narcissistic qualities. I have a family member who, around some people, it really enhances their narcissistic qualities really come out. But when this family member is around, for example, their ex-romantic partner, their empathic qualities really, really came out. And on the spectrum of narcissists, that their romantic partner had way more narcissistic qualities. So that's why their empathicness really shined when they were with that person with narcissistic tendencies. There's a quote that I heard when I was doing kind of a deep dive about a year or two ago on empathicness that I want to share here. And I don't remember who it was or what podcast it was from, but it stopped me in my tracks and it made me reconsider things. And here it goes. People with empathic behaviors may believe their superpower is attaching themselves to the experience of another. They can feel the spectrum of emotions of another, and because they can, it means that they are more connected to their experience, thus better able to help, right? No, I'm learning this is not the case. Attachment is of the ego, not consciousness. Attachment to one's experience only fuels the ego's attachment to the situation's emotions. And that, my friend, is not what will help heal them. In order to overcome struggle and suffering, one needs to learn how to detach herself from the emotional and physical sensations of the experience. These are the forests on the way to the light. And like any ecosystem, they're necessary, but as a bystander, empath or not, this forest does not belong to you, and you do not belong in it. So what does this mean? To me, hearing it, it helped me realize that I looked at myself as an empath, as somebody who has this superpower to know what's going on with everyone around me and how I can help them. Thing is, though, it wasn't my business. It wasn't my business to know these things about them, and it wasn't my business to help them because they didn't ask me for help. If you're a healing-minded person and, and someone with empathic tendencies, you might be hearing this. It's not your responsibility or your business to heal your friends or your family, period. It's not. And you being obsessed with that like I was is going to create more disconnect and more pain because you are connecting yourself with their suffering and you don't belong in there. And it's not your duty to take away their suffering for them. Again, if they ask for help, then great. Do what you can, share your gifts. But if they're not asking for help, you are infiltrating something that you may not be a part of. I like to think of it this way. And actually, I learned this lesson when I went through a phase for about a month where every morning I did an hour and a half of this Qigong practice called Falun Dafa. It's really incredible. And it's been life-changing for me. It can heal physical ailments as well as spiritual ailments. And during that time, I was going through a conflict with a friend. She wasn't treating me the way that I wanted to be treated, and she was suffering in her own shit. And so I was wanting to set a boundary and let her know that the way that I was being treated wasn't okay with me, but I was so attached to her struggle and her suffering that I couldn't stand up for myself. I couldn't see my reasoning to set a boundary to be good enough because I was thinking I'm just going to cause her more pain. Everyone else around her is screwing her over, and I'm going to be one of them. So I might as well keep my mouth shut because she's suffering and she's making all these poor decisions. And I was just so attached to her experience. And there's this part in Falun Dafa where you do these long, over a minute holds with your arms overhead or in certain positions, and they're tough. And when I'm in them, I could feel like my pores screaming. I want to yell and freak out, but instead I breathe, and it really purges a lot of discomfort by sitting in that discomfort. So as I was there, all my thoughts about my friend were coming up, and I'm battling it out of what do I do? And then all of a sudden an epiphany drops in, and I learned that by attaching myself to the suffering of a loved one, I am doing them more of a disservice because my perspective that this is bad and they shouldn't be in this is completely invalid. It is only my perspective. And if I look at it from a bigger picture, they need to be in this struggle for a reason. They need to learn this lesson for a reason. So if I jump in and try to alleviate and take her suffering away, and also not speak up for myself and perpetuate my own suffering, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, if I try to do that, then I am diluting her own experience, and I'm diluting the lesson that she needs to learn. So like that quote said earlier, while the forest is necessary, you're a bystander. The forest does not belong to you, and you are not a tree. You are allowed to observe somebody that you love within their suffering, but remember to detach yourself from the stories. It won't raise your consciousness or raise your healing abilities or your spirituality, or it won't make you more worthy at all. So why waste your time? Why waste your time? So before I dive deeper into how to help yourself as somebody with a lot of really strong empathic qualities, because after I saw this as a superpower, I very quickly saw this as a curse. I realized that all of my pain wasn't my own, and yet I still carried it. I didn't know how to detach myself from it. And there are little things that you can do. Therapy is a great thing, but I do want to leave you. I never liked presenting a problem without a solution. So I do want to leave you with something that you can use to help yourself. But before I do that, I did mention the narcissist. The narcissist, and I know what I said earlier, but it's easier for me to not have to say somebody with narcissistic tendencies. So you know how I feel and how I believe. So I'm gonna just use narcissist and empath interchangeably because it's just easier for my mouth to pronunciate. The narcissist is very, very drawn to the empath, because the empath sometimes can be, like that, have that incestuous tendency to just infiltrate themselves into somebody else's. Is incestuous the right word? Okay, yeah, it is. I had to look it up. The word does indicate suggesting of incest, but it also means improperly intimate or interconnected. And they improperly insert themselves into other people's experiences. And what happens when you're somebody who has empathy and can walk in someone else's shoes, or maybe a lot of sympathy, and you feel their pain, you want it to end. You want that pain to end so that you don't have to feel it anymore. And that goes back to what I was talking about with my friend. I learned that if I'm enabling myself to feel their pain, then of course I'm going to want it to stop. And again, pain is healing. Pain is learning. It hurts to learn. And who am I to stop somebody from healing and learning just because I'm sick of feeling the pain from it? So what an empath typically wants to do, because the narcissist is constantly fucking up, and the empath wants to help the narcissist stop, and so they give themselves fully to the narcissist, and then the narcissist, of course, is going to take what they can from somebody who's giving to them, because their ability to look outside of themselves is very extremely hindered. So the narcissist, I looked up the definition. It's somebody with an inflated sense of their own importance. And they have this deep need for excessive attention and admiration. And they typically will have troubled relationships where, of course, they have done no wrong. It's just nobody else understands them. And of course, there is a lack of empathy for others. So there's this distorted self-image, and they're intensely preoccupied with themselves, which of course this adds to further perpetuates this lack of empathy, because they're just not, that their attention is so involved, they're literally unable or uninterested in the feelings that aren't their own. And there is zero shame in the narcissist in manipulating others to get what they want. And there's also the tool of shame, shaming others to give them what they need. So that's like the overt narcissist. So somebody, we think of where the word narcissist kind of stemmed from was that Greek mythology story where the beautiful man, Narcissus, I believe his name was Narcissus, where he looked in his reflection and he was like, damn, I'm gorgeous. Nobody else is as hot as I am. And so he stayed in front of the mirror until he died. So I did a research paper when I was doing my undergrad in psychology on covert narcissism, which interests me way more than the overt one, because the covert narcissist has a lot more nuances and it's a lot more difficult to diagnose or to label. So the covert narcissist, I like to think of it, the undercover narcissist, is just as self-absorbed as the overt one, but there's no display of self-importance. And there's actually a lot of insecurity and low self-esteem. They tend to be more introverted and hypersensitive to criticism, extremely defensive, and extremely sensitive to what others think of them. They're easily humiliated, but what happens is when when they feel that feeling of humiliation or defensiveness, they tend to be more dismissive or sarcastic about the criticism. They try to show that, oh, that's nothing on my back. You don't matter to me. I don't think of you. They try to shrug it off their shoulders, even though they internalize any sort of criticism deeply, even if it's constructive. They tend to have these grandiose fantasies. So it's like this inner narrative that doesn't match reality, such as this obsession that they're constantly being watched wherever they go and they're being either admired or judged for their looks. Actually, this is something that most teenagers will go through. It's something called, it's like stage spotlight syndrome, where you think that everyone's looking at you and everyone is watching you. Another part of their fantasies is that, like, one day I'm going to be recognized for my talents and I'm going to be promoted for my work, but they don't do anything about it. Or they believe I'm going to be famous and I'm more special than everyone and I'm more talented, but they do nothing with their talents and they do nothing about being discovered. Depression and anxiety is really common for them. And basically, they're in this egocentric world where they're obsessing over where they may be coming up short. But they take a lot of energy too to come off as, I think of, ironically self-deprecating. I mean, honestly, when I think about so many memes that are out there that are people constantly putting themselves down, but as a joke, and making fun of people who take care of themselves or have confidence, I feel there's so many. Social media is for the narcissist. I believe this for a really long time, and it's a beautiful space for the covert narcissist to be seen and validated. And those who are closest to the covert narcissist are typically spending a lot of time trying to convince them of their worth, because that's when they let their guard down to those who are closest to them. They start to reveal that nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, I suck, I'm a loser. And so they're constantly having to be built back up. And then those who are closest to them are also having to constantly convince them that they are not out to get them. They tend to be really paranoid. And something that was interesting in my research is they are not incapable. The narcissist, at least the covert one, is not incapable of empathy. But actually, I think both are able to do this. They're able to engage in self-serving empathy. So what does that mean? Generally, they do things to win the approval of others, or I would say the overt one would mimic empathy in order to get what they want. But both are trying to get what they want. But here's the thing, it's funny, is if the covert narcissist displays this empathy, but they don't receive praise or admiration for their sacrifice, they tend to feel bitter and resentful and will make remarks about how people take advantage of them and don't appreciate them. Narcissism can be genetic or contingent upon how you grew up. So you may have been hearing what I'm saying and you may be self-diagnosing. You may be like, or diagnosing family members and friends or exes or current partners, and you may be thinking, oh shit, I'm a covert narcissist. But here's the thing. This is why I don't like to say somebody is an empath or somebody is a narcissist, because unless it's for the sake of time, but it's because we all engage in these sort of behaviors, whether it's the empathic behaviors or the narcissistic behaviors. And I'm not claiming here to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, or an expert on this topic at all. This really is my own experience. And I'm sure maybe there's a researcher who's listening to me talking going, they're cringing. They're going, no, there absolutely is a narcissist. And they might be right. But we all exist on a spectrum that is low vibe and high vibe and everything in between. And if you're telling yourself that I'm wrong, then you're lying to yourself. When we are acting out of a place of trauma or a negative core belief that instills a negative low vibrational emotion such as fear, guilt, shame, nobody wants to feel that. So when we engage with others out of that place to try to not feel that way anymore, but we're not aware, we're being manipulative. And the manipulation is one of the key features of the narcissist. And what I'm trying to say is we all do it. We all have trauma. We all have negative core beliefs. We all have fears. I know I've said this on the show before, my number one fear whenever I do fearscaping, so whenever something happens and I react in a certain way that doesn't feel in alignment, and I try to tie that behavior back home to understand, it's always this fear that I'm going to die alone and I'm going to be alone. So I know I absolutely engage in behaviors where I'm trying to manipulate others to be close to me, to want to stay with me. And if you listen to the Whispers of the Inner Child that I put out, then you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about and exactly the rhetoric that goes on in my mind that I'm trying to break. I'm trying to break the cycle. And I'm not constantly acting from that place. It's only sometimes when I'm not aware, or if I let it get to me. When I let it get to me. But I don't think I'm a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist, but I have engaged in narcissistic behaviors that I am so not proud of. And I also know in all my research with the empath, who is the empath in the spiritual community? Well, I pretty damn good at doing all of those things, of tuning in with herbs and food and animals and nature and other people and learning about their lives and all that stuff without having to have a verbal word from them. All right, I think you get the gist. I think I'm talking in circles at this point. So I want to leave you with a few tools that you can use. So the first tool is making your shield. But be aware, this is not a shield so that you can keep everyone out. This is a shield that you create for you to feel safe to come out and join the rest of the world. I create this protective field when I start my day so that I'm no longer walking into a room and involved and knowing everything that's going on with everyone. It's funny because sometimes I'll have people ask me, a friend or a schoolmate who need some insight, they'll say, "Oh, do you already know what's going on? Do I even need to tell you?" And I'll say, "No, I don't, because I'm purposely not tuning in because it's none of my business." If, however, you are coming to me for a reading or a healing or for acupuncture, I do turn it on. I do turn my ability to step into your shoes, your field, whatever. I turn it on, and I'm able to read auric fields and connect with your higher self, ancestors, and guides. And if I have permission, I will scan my client's field with my hand and tune into where they are carrying physical pain and or emotional baggage and why. That's always the interesting part. Why? And sometimes I'll feel, oh, you must get a lot of burning pain in your abdomen, or you must get like a lot of lumps in your throat, because I can feel it myself. And it's actually pretty incredible what I've been able to pick up on with no prior knowledge, such as miscarriages, abortions, or collapsed or missing organs and childhood trauma, and etc. But can you imagine what my life would be like if I was reading people all day, every day without neither of our permission? Actually, I do know what it's like, because I lived it and I was sick. I was a deficient and depleted person. And I was also trying to grasp onto anything that would convince me that I was worthy. And now that I know that I am worthy, regardless of what I know and who I help, I don't feel the need to infiltrate myself into people's lives without permission. So how I create this protection is a protection prayer. And it goes like this. This is my protection. This is my seal. Nothing shall breach this, which is not sanctioned by me, through me, to me, at my source. I am unseen, unheard, undetected, and unobserved by anything which should not serve my higher self across all timelines and dimensions. This is my command, and so it shall be. And I'll include that in the show notes. And as I'm doing it, I visualize my shield. And when I first started doing it, I had to do, I clapped my hands above my head and then put them under my legs on my right side, under my right thigh. Then I clapped my hands above my head, clap them under towards on my left side. And after a while, I started to just visualize, and it didn't happen right away, but the more you say it, the more you will start to energetically imprint on it and create that protective seal. And I 110% feel it now, and I feel the difference when I don't. Something that was really interesting that happened was I was back home, and there were some people over, and one of the girls that was there, they fainted, and people were looking at me saying, "Stephanie, help her. And I'm sitting there like, how the fuck am I going to help her? And I think people were elevating me to this platform of, because we didn't know why she was having these. She was like, she convulsed and fainted, and nobody knew why she was having it. And they equated it to an emotional trauma that she was going through. And I think everyone around me was like, Stephanie knows trapped emotions. Stephanie's an energy healer. She can help her. But I'm like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. So I just stayed close to her, and she eventually came to, and she grabbed my hand and was just like, "I'm so glad you're here. I feel so safe with you." But as she was holding me, and it was like an hour until I realized this, I was feeling my life force being drained out of me. And I realized that she was draining me, and I was allowing it to happen. And when I realized that, I created my shield. I created my protection, and immediately I could feel the difference. I was no longer drained. So yeah, in the energetic sense, practice now. Practice. The sooner you have it, the sooner you'll start to connect with what unique visualization, what unique feelings. Is it heat? Is it tingling that comes to you when you create your shield? But in 3D sense, in the world around you, what you can do is prioritize your needs. Put yourself first. I wrote in a diary once, and I recently read it, and it broke my heart. I wrote, I would so much rather betray myself than to allow anyone around me to feel uncomfortable. And it's not a way to live. Oh, how many times have I betrayed myself and not put myself first because it was so much easier to look at someone else's problems than to look at my own. And I think somebody with empathic qualities that are disbalanced tends to do that because of course it's easier to fix everyone else than fix yourself. But you need to prioritize you. Don't ever betray yourself. And start to learn about boundaries. Boundaries are an amazing thing. That being said, it's come to light that I think boundaries have gotten a misrepresentation or are misunderstood. A boundary is not a means for you to control someone and to control what they feel, think, or believe. A boundary is an opportunity for you to express in your relationship things, behaviors, or language that has you feeling unsafe, unheard, unworthy, etc. So for example, I had a friend who wasn't communicating, having an open line of communication whenever we would make plans. And I'm somebody, I need to plan things. I have a lot going on in my schedule, and for me to make things work, I need an open line of communication. So whenever we would text, she would kind of drop off the face of the earth and then reemerge within a couple of hours of our plan. And so I let her know that, hey, when you drop off the face of the earth, one, I feel like my time isn't worthy to you and that I don't matter. And two, I need confirmation so that I can make the plan happen in my busy schedule. And if you can't do that, then I don't know how we're going to find time to be together. And we worked it out. So I wasn't trying to control her in any way. I know that she's just somebody who likes to drop off, but I had to let her know that this behavior is not okay with me. I hope that's making sense. I mean, saying to someone, if you don't agree with me, that's my boundary. That's not it. That's not it. It's not about control. It's about making your needs known and hoping that the other side of the party will honor that. And they don't always honor that. And that's another huge thing about boundaries, is being comfortable with others' discomfort. I recommend you listen to, I'll try to do a little research and put it in the show notes, but the Yoga Girl podcast, so Conversations from the Heart with Rachel Brathen. She has a professional on boundaries on the show, and it was life-changing when I listened to that episode. But yeah, just let your heart shine. Create your field, create your shield, set your boundaries and allow yourself to shine versus being a sponge that just allows everyone else to shine by absorbing and filtering out the soil. You are not matcha. You are a human. You are a being of light. And how can we let ourselves shine? Well, get to know your higher self and honor the light and the shadow aspects of the elements within you. I also think that honoring your ancestors is a really great way to know yourself and let yourself shine. A great example is, I think of my friend Sasha. She has this beautiful, everywhere she goes, people stop her. She has this beautiful, big, fluffy, gorgeous hair. I call it her halo. And she used to straighten it all the time so that she could look more white, so that she could fit in. And when the moment she shaved all her hair off and let her hair grow back in its lusciousness, was a huge lesson in her learning how to show up as herself fully and unapologetically without worrying what others expect from her. And I could imagine when she started to really embody that, her ancestors must have been saying, thank you. This is what we gave you. And you're rocking it. And God, she shines. She really does. And appreciate the fact that this can be a really scary thing. No longer being the one who fixes everything, or no longer putting your spotlight on everyone else and putting your spotlight within, can be very scary. Being seen without your walls and layers of pleasing and anticipating the needs of others might trigger you. You might not be able to find an anchor on all the reasons why you like yourself, and it will be triggering for others around you, especially those with narcissistic tendencies and who have been relying on your empathicness and your willingness to betray yourself so that others around you don't feel discomfort. You won't be easy to control anymore, and you might lose a lot of friendships and relationships. And you might not like yourself for some time. I gotta say, if you're on this path of unbecoming and whatever you want to call it, the spiritual path, you're gonna lose a lot of reasons why you like yourself, because you're gonna find yourself at the bottom of the pit of all the pits. But that's the place to be, because that's the moment you realize that I don't need a reason to like myself. I don't need a reason to be worthy or to feel loved. It's worth it. I promise you, I'm on the other side of it, and it's worth it. And I'm healthier and happier than ever. And my relationships are so good. I've struggled for so long with my relationships. Another tool that you can do for yourself is, so I mentioned the energetic field. That's one tool. The setting boundaries is another tool, but a step that you can take before setting boundaries is journaling and asking yourself, what are my non-negotiables? What are things in a relationship I am not okay with? And through not controlling someone else, just by expressing your needs and deciding what will be the consequence of a boundary being crossed. For example, I remember telling a family member who was talking about me behind my back. I remember telling them that if you can't stop doing this, which makes me feel incredibly unsafe, if you can't stop doing that, then I won't be coming over anymore to spend time with you, because I feel really unsafe being myself. And that's a whole other story. And unfortunately right now they're not so much in my life, and it's for now. I know that we are ever evolving and nothing's permanent. But yeah, non-negotiables is a really great thing to journal on. And then I think I took this from Lola Pickett, creating your empath manifesto. So what does it mean to you to have all these empathic qualities? Who do you want to be as a person with empathic qualities? How do you want to make your empathic qualities shine for you and be a superpower rather than a curse? And actually, I wrote down my own, and I wrote it down a little over a year ago, and reading it, I think it's pretty damn good. So I'm going to leave you with this, my empath manifesto. I fully accept everything I am and everything I'm not with compassion and patience. I honor my sensitivities and accept them as a gift rather than a curse. I consciously choose to let go of my belief that I am responsible for the emotions and pain of those around me. I do not let myself down in order to please others. Being a good Stephanie is my top priority. My emotions are my own and my pain is my own, and I bow in respect to what already is. I choose this for the sake of love, for the sake of growth, and for the sake of remembering. Thank you all so much, as always, for being here, for listening, for sharing your energy. I have so much gratitude and appreciation for you. If you'd like to work with me, I am open with energy healings, energy readings, mediumship. You can find details on my services on www.schoolofwhispers.com. Be sure to check the show notes for a lot of the things I talked about today and to find my social media. I will be feeling your energy next week.